I just looked up really quick at that light and now I'm like,
It's very bright. I feel like it's brighter than usual. Maybe we should turn down. Hey guys. Okay. What do you think it's bright?
it's a little bright. It's a little.
That's good. Okay. Now
I can see.
now it's like we're not staring at the surface of the sun.
That's when I look at you, Megan. I think it's funny that somebody on YouTube asked if I'm single.
I know.
So like, what was I wearing that day?
Is Kara single? I'm just wondering. She's not. Just so
I'm not.
she's with me.
I was gonna say Megan.
This is the Witches Magic Murder
Oh.
Mystery Podcast.
Hey, I'm Kara.
I'm Megan. Hello.
Hello.
Trying to check our
Sound.
Mm-hmm.
Is this you? Yeah, that's you. You didn't even have to move.
You should
I just
probably put the lid on it.
with
it's
your
me.
reputation of beverages on a desk. That's fine.
What you mean?
We don't have video evidence of that.
I don't think we do.
No, I think that
Because
was
I'm sure I would have posted it as a blooper.
I think we were just recording sound only that day.
Just spilled water everywhere.
No, it was coffee.
Or coffee. I'm klutzy. It's like a problem.
It's fine. I'm used to it. Sophie's the same way.
It's part of my awkwardness.
We love her for it.
Today I have a witch story.
Okay.
I still needed that break. I've been having like nightmares, just bad dreams that are like horrible and like murdery stuff.
Insane right now.
Oh, yeah, well,
yeah.
And so I'm just like, I need a break from the murders. I think it
Yes.
was the Jens and Elizabeth.
Oh, you did a lot of research on that.
And so
for
I'm
the
just like, I just
two-parter.
need another week without it.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I also have a really science heavy episode coming.
Oh, I love it when that happens.
It's very physics heavy, so it's going to take a while for
Megan's
it's going to
professional
hurt
in the science industry.
all our brains, but it's fascinating. And also, today is our 150th episode. I know.
Happy
anniversary. Yeah. 150. I'm just like amazed.
What? That's insane to me.
I know.
Megan, it's been almost 2 years.
I know.
It's halfway to Halloween.
I know.
It's halfway to Megan's birthday,
to my
guys.
birthday, which is the more important.
Yeah, that's all that matters. All that matters.
Okay. All right. So we're going back to the 17th century, Lancashire, England, where you and I would both absolutely 100%.
Is it Lancashire or Lanarkshire? It's Lancashire. There's no R in there. What's Lanarkshire? Is there a street called that I've been on one time?
No idea, but I was basically going to be like, oh, it's
Cod
wherever
pass.
you say it is. I have cod pass. We would definitely be accused of witchcraft in 17th century England. So there were two rival families. The Southern family, led by Elizabeth the Southern.
Ooh.
She'd been known as a witch for like 50 years.
Ooh.
And the Chaddocks family, led by a woman named Anne Whittle. And both of these women are in their 80s at this point. Elizabeth Southern was also known as Old Demdike. I looked it up.
What a nickname.
I was like,
why?
I don't want to mispronounce that. And Anne Whittle was also known as Mother Chaddocks, which makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Old Demdike.
Old Demdike.
So I'm going to refer to them mostly by those nicknames because there are other Elizabeths and Annes in the story. So
of course there is. I feel like everybody's name was that.
In that time in Europe, for sure. Or England.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about this before, but back in those days, of course, it was just a normal part of life that there were like village healers in towns who were really into like magic and natural healing. The magic was more about that, right? Like natural healing and using herbs and using magic to fix things rather than the kind of like evil kind of stuff, like the magic is more of that. So we talked about Biddy Early, Grace Sherwood, Mother Shipton, Leah Smock. Like those are all examples of the witches. It's the same type of thing. So I feel like maybe it was just all a big pharmaceutical company conspiracy. We don't like natural medicine.
We don't like it.
Isn't it funny
Nobody take it.
How now a lot of these things that they did, the natural medicine type stuff, is becoming way more
the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 100 years ago, these women were completely, some of them
easy
died
for
it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we're talking about Pendle Forest, which is in Lancashire, Pendle Hill, that whole area. There was a lot of money to be made in witchcraft, and reports of witchcraft were a regular thing. The idea here is that the Southerns and the Chaddixes each wanted to be known as like the best witches.
That witch.
Like they're 100% that witch. The real witch is like the most powerful.
Yeah.
And a little competitive spirit is fine, right? But this gets like out of control.
Ooh.
So King James the First,
It's like the Hatfields and McCoys.
but of
But
witchcraft.
do it witchy style.
So King James the First was in power at the time, and his distaste for witchcraft was well known.
Pause. Can your image for this be two, like on a battlefield, two witch families like going at?
Oh yeah, like Braveheart style.
Hatfield McCoy.
I should try. I should try to make that. Yeah, because I think this is definitely one I'll have to make a graphic for.
Anyways,
okay, so King James the First, even before he took the throne, everybody knew he hates witchcraft. He wrote a book called Demonology, instructing the reader to condemn and prosecute not only those who practice witchcraft, but also those who supported people who practice witchcraft. I just realized that I'm like leaning hard into it's fine.
No, it's good.
How loud am I? Okay, so as king, his feelings about witchcraft had great influence on how the general public felt about it too. Because you got to remember, you don't want to get on the king's bad side ever.
Yeah, no. You can't do that.
Professor yeah, exactly. Professor Ronald Hutton from the University of Bristol referred to demonology as a mandate for the British to fight witches. So that's the context we're in when all this happens. And in Lancashire, where the Pendle Forest was located, it was known for being like a rough, crime-ridden type of place.
Okay.
Old Demdike, Elizabeth Southern, had a granddaughter named Alison Device. It's Allison with a Z.
That's interesting.
I'm going to say it wrong. I'm going to say it Allison.
Allison.
I can't help myself. On March 21st, 1621, Allison was on the road to Trodden Forest and passed by...
You're doing great.
Thank you. Thank you. Passed by a peddler. Do you know how... Now I can't say any words.
It's like the bad ones.
That's like you complimented me, and then I couldn't say past.
Cod passed.
Okay. She passed by a peddler named John Law, and she asked him for some pins, like pins. So, in 17th century, metal pins were handmade and relatively expensive, and they were often used for magical purposes, like healing, particularly for treating warts.
Oh.
Divination, and for love magic.
Whoa.
So this may be why Allison needed them, and also why John Law didn't want to sell them to her.
Oh, he was like, "You's a witch."
Yeah. Either way, he didn't want to sell them to her. I don't know if she was begging for them or if she was going to pay for them, but he just was like,
I can't do that.
So shortly afterward, like maybe even minutes afterward, he had a stroke.
Oh.
He didn't die, though. And Allison later went to visit him and confessed that when he wouldn't give or sell her the pins, she had told the devil to lame him. So she's like, I put a curse on you. I'm so sorry.
I wished that I willed it to be.
Yeah. So she asked for his forgiveness. And she did this on her own. He wasn't accusing her of anything.
Right.
But she heard that it happened and she's like,
oh, I feel really guilty.
I'm so powerful. I
didn't know that.
I don't know my own power. So
listen, I used to work with a lady who would say that, yeah, I am so powerful that I can think somebody to be dead and they're going to be dead. And she named a couple of people and I was like, they died of cancer. You knew they were dying.
They were literally terminally ill when you said this.
They were dying.
What a terrible thing to say out loud.
Exactly. Yeah.
She
was crazy.
I made them die.
She got angry at me and one of my friends one time because my friend told me that she wanted to put my gay brother in her pocket and carry him around because he's so cute and adorable and hilarious. And she got up in my face and said, "That's not God's will." And I said, "To put a person in your pocket."
Put a person, yeah. Surely you're not referring to the gay part.
Yeah. Yeah. Oof. She was a mess. Yeah. Anyways.
So anyway, at the time he had the stroke, she went, apologized, took responsibility for it, asked for his forgiveness, and he didn't do anything in that moment.
Okay.
He was just like, okay.
He's like, you're crazy.
But here's something else you need to know. Earlier that year, every justice of the peace in Lancashire was ordered to put together a list of people in their area who refused to attend the English church and take communion
What?
because it's a criminal offense. So this is the whole issue with the Catholic Church,
Right.
So they don't like Catholics. You got to go to the Christian church. So being a witch is bad. Also, being a Catholic is
Right.
bad.
Right. Right.
The justice of the peace in Pendle was a man named Roger Noel. Professor Malcolm Gaskill from the University of East Anglia called Roger an ambitious man
Oh.
whose path to success in his career rested in identifying, quote, nonconformists, like Catholics or witches, and bring them to justice.
Oh. He sounds like a great human.
Yeah. Well, it's like any kind of incentive for catching people like that. It motivates you to perhaps it, catch the wrong people or catch innocent people,
Just go on a literal witch hunt.
Yeah. So John Law's family made a complaint to Roger that John had been injured by witchcraft, and Roger opened an investigation. So Alison Device was summoned to appear before Noel along with her mother Elizabeth, who is Old Dim Dyke, and her brother James on March 30th, 1612.
Okay.
So let's see, what day did it start? March 21st. This is only 9 days later.
Yeah.
So Allison, her mother Elizabeth, and her brother James were summoned to appear before Noel. And, oh wait. So Allison confessed under torture that she had sold her soul to the devil and that she had told the devil to lame John Law. Allison's brother James said that his sister had also confessed to bewitching a local child, which I'm like, James.
James, why?
Yeah, he's over. Oh yeah, she also did this. Don't forget that part, sis.
I'm not guilty, but y'all should know what else she's done.
And then her mother Elizabeth was less chatty. The only thing, oh, I'm sorry. Her mother Elizabeth was not Old Dim Dyke. That's the whole thing. Old Dim Dyke is the 80-year-old.
Okay, and then there's
Allison is her granddaughter. Between that is the generation who's named also Elizabeth.
Okay.
So Allison's mother Elizabeth was less chatty. The only thing that got her to admit was that her mother, Old Dim Dyke, had a mark on her body that many, including Roger Noel, considered to be a mark left by the devil after he had sucked her blood. So this is the whole thing,
Yeah,
like a mole or a birthmark.
This right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't we all? Yeah.
And that
Well,
right
we're
there.
all,
Yeah, like.
we're all evil.
Yeah, you've got it right there in the same spot.
Yeah. But then Roger asked Allison about Anne Whittle, Mother Chattox, remember? And their rivals. Why?
Why would that even come up?
Did Roger ask her?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because he
they're
sees this
rivals and he's
opportunity. Yeah. So that's when it feels like this becomes one of those instances of forcing one witch to turn in other witches in order to save herself,
Yeah.
And remember that I said that they're rivals. So the reason they were rivals is because they had been feuding for years. In 1601, someone in the Chattox family broke into the home of the Southern family and stole items that were worth £1. It's about £100 now, but still doesn't seem like enough for an all-out family feud. But it is really infuriating when someone violates your security. So beyond all that, Allison blamed the death of her father, John Device, on Mother Chattox.
Oh.
Allison claimed that her father was so afraid of Anne Whittle, Mother Chattox, that he had agreed to give her 8 pounds, 3.6 kilograms of oatmeal. It's Kara's favorite. She loves oatmeal.
What on earth?
Every year if she promised not to hurt his family. So he's like, leave us alone. And I will give you this oatmeal every year. So he did that every year.
Quaker Oats was made?
Yes, 100%. He did that every year until the year before he died. And on his deathbed, John Device claimed that his sickness had been caused by Mother Chattox because he had not paid her the oatmeal. So Allison also brought up the deaths of 4 men that had happened years before and said that Mother Chattox was the one who had murdered them as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Allison is accused.
Telling all the tales here.
Right. Yeah. She just couldn't stop talking.
Yeah.
So Allison is accused of causing John Law to have a stroke, and then that leads to her own confession of witchcraft, as well as throwing her family and the Chattox family under the bus. It's just like, let's all go.
Yeah.
On April 2nd, 1612, Old Dim Dyke and Mother Chattox, who were both, like I said, in their 80s and blind at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Along with Mother Chattox's daughter, Anne Redfern, were summoned to
What a cool
appear
name.
before Noel. There's a lot of good names.
Yeah.
So they're summoned to appear before Noel. And that's when Old Dimdyke and Mother Chattox both give pretty damaging confessions.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So Old Dimdyke confessed to having given her soul to the devil 20 years earlier.
When she was 60?
Apparently so. But she had been practicing witchcraft for longer than that. I think it's just it had reached.
Janet found her.
Yes. Always. That Janet.
Janet.
Queen of the witches. Mother Chattox said that she too had given her soul away, but to, quote, a thing like a Christian man, on his promise that she would not lack anything and would get any revenge she desired. So I think she's saying that the devil took the form of a Christian man.
Okay.
Anne Redfern confessed to nothing, but Old Dimdyke was like, listen, I saw Anne Redfern making clay figures, which was something akin to like voodoo dolls, but not voodoo dolls because we're not talking about voodoo, right? But something like that. So another woman named Margaret Crook came forward to make a complaint to Noel. So she's not a witch. She's someone who's saying she's affected by it. She said that her brother had once been in an argument with Anne Redfern, and afterward he had gotten sick and died. And when he was sick before he died, he had blamed his sickness on Redfern.
Man, next time I get a cold.
I know. That's the thing. It's like, just people could say anything.
Yeah.
And there's no defending yourself, you know?
Hearsay.
Like we keep saying. Yeah, it's hearsay. Anne Redfern and Johnny Depp, you know?
Yep.
So based on the evidence, question mark, that he had gathered and the confessions he had obtained, Roger Nowell ordered that Old Dimdyke, Mother Chattox, Anne Redfern, and Alison Device be detained to await trial for maleficium, which is where the word maleficent came from, right?
Ugh.
So maleficium means causing harm by witchcraft. I had no idea that that's where maleficent came from.
Wow.
Makes me happy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good
so
job, Disney.
they go, yeah. Way to do your research. I think Disney's going to do well, don't you?
I think they're going to go places.
So they go to jail. Now, Elizabeth Device, who is Alison's mother, Old Dimdyke's daughter,
right,
held a secret meeting for people who were sympathetic to what was happening to her family. So she's like, isn't this awful? What an outrage. Let's all get together and have a meeting about it. This meeting took place on Good Friday, when all the good people should have been at church. No. But Roger Nowell found out about it. And so I think that the fact that there's a meeting's bad.
Yeah.
But also the fact that it was on Good Friday.
Right, when everybody's supposed
worse.
to. Yeah.
Right.
Taking communion. And
so he held an inquiry to find out what the meeting was for.
Oh my gosh.
Who was there and what had happened there. So this led to the detainment of 8 more people to go to trial. Elizabeth and James Device, who we already met, Alison's brother. Jeanette Device, which is Alison's sister.
Okay.
As well as people who weren't even part of the Southern or Chattox families.
Just random neighbors.
I'm going to say these names, Kara. Okay. Jane Bullock and her son, John Bullock. Alice Nutter. Why do those have to be?
This is a great article.
Terrible. Okay. Jane Bullock and her son, John Bullock, Alice Nutter, Catherine Hewitt, and Alice Gray. We're never going to say them again. I mean, we are, but I'm not going to say the last names again. So,
but there's so many of them.
I just can't. So, quick aside, because this messed me up forever when I was trying to research this. In some cases, even in some of the sources that I've linked here, Jeanette Device is referred to as Jeanette Preston. But if you read through them, it doesn't make any sense because it'll be like, well, Jeanette Preston is one of these, and she was found guilty of witchcraft and hanged in July of that year. And then it says, and then she testified in August. And I'm like,
but how?
She's dead.
Her ghost?
And so I think the confusion comes from this. Jeanette Preston was a woman who was found guilty of witchcraft and hanged a month before this goes to trial.
Okay.
And one of the judges in Jeanette Preston's trial also goes on to preside over this trial of the Pendleton Witches.
Oh.
So having the 2 Jeanettes apparently makes it
just
confusing. I don't know. But just in case you start reading.
What if he was like, didn't I just deal with you, Jeanette?
We already did this.
Jeanette, I thought
you are a witch.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, just in case you start reading about it and get confused like I did, I finally found a book that like went through
Laid
it
it
all.
all out.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, now I understand. So
Okay.
Elizabeth's daughter is Jeanette Device,
Okay.
and that is the Jeanette involved in the Pendleton
Okay.
witch trials. Jeanette Preston is not a part of this trial at all. Okay? Okay.
Gotcha.
So there were the original 4 that were detained,
Uh-huh.
plus those new 8.
Right.
Now we have the 12 Pendleton witches. Because remember, King James I wrote that book, and it's like you can't even be supportive of witchcraft, which is why even being at that meeting that Elizabeth Southern
You're
had,
accused of.
you're just as guilty. That apparently means you're just as guilty
Right.
as those who practice witchcraft.
Yep.
So Old Demdike ended up dying in confinement before the trial, so she's gone. So now there's only 11 left to go to trial, and this would later become known as the Lancashire witch trials. It was an unusual trial in that it was documented in an official publication, The Wonderful Discovery of Witches in the County of Lancaster, written by the clerk of court named Thomas Potts. So this is
That
why
sounds familiar.
we know so much.
Maybe I saw like a documentary or
there's
something.
a lot of books that have spawned off of that.
Okay.
And it's one of the few witch trials that we have all this documentation on. And it's also, the story has remained a really well-known legend because of this book.
Oh.
And we'll talk more about the book in a few minutes. But the Pendle Witches were tried in a group that also included the Samlesbury Witches. You know them.
Yeah.
Samlesbury
I
Witches.
studied them nonstop.
The charges against whom included child murder and cannibalism.
Oh my God.
A woman named
people with the cannibalism.
A woman named Margaret Pearson, who was known as the Padiham Witch, who was facing her 3rd trial for witchcraft, this time for killing a horse, and Isabel Roby from Wendell, accused of using witchcraft to cause sickness. So it's a group trial. The 12 Pendle Witches, 3 Samlesbury Witches, the Padiham Witch, and the 1 witch from Wendell.
He's like, let's just get it all out.
Yeah, we're going to do you all at once because this is Roger Noel and he's ambitious and he's like, I'm going to make a splash do it all here. The other thing that's really interesting, if you look into so when I think the witch trials, I automatically go to the Salem witch trials,
right? Yeah.
Where we know it was a whole lot of witches and a whole lot of executions at once. That wasn't the norm in England. No. So there were witch trials that took place over like 3 centuries, but they were generally pretty. I mean, if you went on trial as being a witch, you were in a pretty bad position to begin with. But like this one woman made it through 2 other trials, right? Like you weren't always found guilty, and sometimes you could bring new evidence and be set free. It wasn't like it was here. Yeah. And then the idea of having this many witches at once is one of the reasons why this trial stands out, because it was unusual for England, at least at the time. Yeah. So there were 2 judges presiding over the trial, Sir James Altham and Sir Edward Bromley. Bromley was hoping for a promotion to a circuit closer to London. Oh, was he? And Altham was nearing the end of his judicial career, but he'd been accused of a miscarriage of justice not long before this.
Lovely.
Yeah, where a woman had been sentenced to death by hanging. So both of them had reasons to want to be on the king's good side. And they may have thought that the best way to gain his favor was by convicting some witches. Get some of these dangerous witches off the streets.
Get them out
of the forest. Get out of the forest.
Sloppy in the kitchen, me in the forest.
So let's keep that in mind for Thomas Potts too, right? Like we know the judges had ambitions. But Thomas Potts, the guy who wrote the book that details this whole thing, Judge Bromley read the book before publication and declared it to be truly reported. But I don't know how much faith I have in Bromley's objectivity. Yeah. And one article I read said that Potts, quote, certainly used this book to gain the king's favor. And in the book, Potts cited demonology in it several times.
Of course he did.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is all just one big, like, we're going to make the king happy. He's going to reward us.
He's going to do great things for us.
Yes. And another thing is, the book is presented like it's a verbatim account, but it doesn't give you word for word what was said. Right. It just tells you what happened.
Oh, okay.
Which is important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, 9-year-old Jeanette Device, Alison's sister, was one of the accused Pendle Witches. Yeah. But she was 9? She was 9,
Oh,
which that is really important. And we're going to talk about all its implications later because it had implications that really made a big impact on things.
yeah.
So today we'd say she made a deal. She testified against the rest of them and we'll go easy on you, right?
Right.
So she's 9. So now normally someone her age wouldn't have been allowed to be such an important witness. But when it comes to witch trials, all the normal rules went out the window. In King James's book, he had written children, women, and liars.
They just go hand in hand.
But this is the best part. Children, women, and liars can be witnesses over high treason against God.
We were going to that.
I just keep reading it.
Children, women, and
And liars.
liars.
It's
can't
okay.
be-
It's okay if you lie. What? What's the point? I don't. Children, women, and liars can be witnesses over high treason against God. But you're
Lying
already
about
saying
this
they're
person
lying.
is a witness, but they're lying about it.
Yeah.
I done seen her on the corner of the street trying to buy them pens.
And I'm lying, but that's okay because King James
And I
said it
told
was.
you under oath that I'm going to lie about this.
I just
but
don't.
it's okay because the king said it's good.
Yeah.
What?
Just I don't know.
Oh,
I
my
don't know.
gosh.
Okay, so 9-year-old Jeanette Device was
Mhm.
allowed to be a witness. And like I said, keep it in mind because it's going to be really important later. So, day 1 of the trial, August 18th, 1612. Anne Whittle, Mother Chattox, is accused of the murder of Robert Nutter. She pled not guilty,
Of course.
but remember earlier she had confessed to Roger.
Yeah.
Now, they say it's likely that she was under torture at the
Well,
time
yeah.
of her
Yeah,
confession. And her confession was read in court.
Mm.
And then, aside from that, a man named James Robinson had lived with the Chattox family 20 years earlier and said that he remembered that Robert had accused Mother Chattox of turning his beer sour.
You left it out.
Anne broke down and admitted her guilt, asked God for forgiveness, and asked that the judges be merciful to her daughter, Anne Redfern. She's found guilty.
Of course.
Next up is Elizabeth Device. Potts' book that we keep talking about said that Elizabeth was, quote, an odious witch
Oh.
who suffered from a facial deformity resulting in her left eye being set lower than her right. Odious means repulsive. And that language right there is what made me stop when I was reading on this and remember that Thomas Potts is probably also, like, it's not like he's some sort of
Right.
fair and balanced.
Right, yeah.
She is charged with the murders of James Robinson.
Okay.
I assume a different Robinson than
Right.
we just talked about. James Robinson, John Robinson, and together with Alice Nutter and Old Demdike, the murder of Henry Mitten.
Oh my God.
Elizabeth was adamant that she was innocent.
Hmm.
The main witness against Elizabeth Device was her daughter, Jeanette. When Jeanette entered the courtroom, her mother screamed, and Jeanette demanded that Elizabeth be removed from the court before she climbed onto a table, because she's 9, and gave evidence against her mother. She said Elizabeth had been a witch for 3 or 4 years, and that she had a familiar in the shape of a brown dog that she called Ball. And Jeanette said she had heard her mother ask Ball to help with various murders.
What?
And Elizabeth was found guilty.
Okay.
James Device, Allison's brother, remember?
Mm-hmm.
He was accused.
Who was like, oh, by the way.
Yeah, don't forget this.
I saw this.
He was accused of the murders of Anne Townley and John Duckworth.
What on earth?
He pled not guilty. He also testified against his mother, by the way, saying that he had seen her making a clay figure of one of her victims. But it didn't help him to testify against another witch. He'd made an earlier confession to Roger Knoll, and that was read in court. Jeanette also said that she'd seen her brother asking a black dog to help him kill Anne Townley.
What?
And James was found guilty.
So these dogs just go around murdering people?
Yeah. Well, they're familiars, so I guess they're spirits or something.
Yeah.
So day 2 of the trial. That was day 1. Now we're on day 2. Anne Redfern was charged with the murder of Robert Nutter, and the evidence against her was considered unsatisfactory, and she was acquitted, which you're like, oh, how about that?
Yeah, wait, what?
But there's a twist.
Oh.
She has a second trial right there.
Again, they're
this
like, hey,
time,
man, just stick around, please.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up. This time for the murder of Robert Nutter's dad, Christopher. So remember how old Demdike had said in her confession to Roger Knoll that she had seen Anne making clay figures?
Right.
Those apparently were of the Nutter family.
Oh my
And
gosh.
now she passed away in prison, but her confession was read in court.
Oh.
Other witnesses said that Anne was a witch, quote, more dangerous than her mother. She never admitted guilt, and she never testified against any of the other accused witches. Anne was found guilty.
Oh, of course she is.
Jane and John Bulcock were accused of the murder of Jeanette Dean, or Deanne possibly. They both said that they had not attended the secret meeting that, Elizabeth had
Right.
back at the beginning.
Yeah.
But Jeanette Device was like, nope, I saw him there. Jane and John were found guilty. That's all it took.
All it took. All it took.
Alice Nutter was accused of the murder of Henry Minton. Alice didn't say anything before or during the trial except to enter her plea of not guilty.
Okay.
The thing that's interesting about Alice Nutter is that she was Catholic. She was known to be from a very well-known Catholic family. And she was also, I think she was the widow of a wealthy landowner. She wasn't really the same social status as the rest of these.
Yeah.
And there is speculation that they took the opportunity to get her because they thought it would send a message about being Catholic.
Oh, okay.
So the only evidence against her was that James Device said his grandmother, Old Demdike, had told him of the murder, and then Jeanette said that Alice had been at the secret meeting. Alice was found guilty.
Of course.
Yeah. Catherine Hewitt and Alice Gray were accused of murdering a child named Anne Folds.
Jeez.
James Device had said that both Hewitt and Gray had told people at the secret meeting that they had committed the murder, and Jeanette also identified Catherine as being at the secret meeting. We don't really know anything about Alice Gray as far as the evidence against her, but Catherine was found guilty and Alice was not. And there's no account of Alice's trial in Potts' book. She's listed as going to trial, and then she's listed as found not guilty.
That's crazy.
So we don't know how
or
why. Alison Device was the last to go on trial and the only one to be confronted by her alleged victim, John Law. So remember, that's the encounter that started this whole thing. What if they had just not passed on the road that day?
Right. Yeah, everything would.
Or if he had just sold her the pen.
Right. This would have never started.
When John entered the court, it's documented that Allison fell to her knees, confessed, and burst into tears.
Oh my gosh.
Allison is found guilty.
Ugh.
Now that's the end of the trial. It's 2 days. All those people on trial.
All those people just took 2 days.
2 days. 10 of the 11 accused Pendle Witches were found guilty. And remember, the 12th one, Old Demdike, had died in jail.
Right, yeah.
One interesting thing, a lot of these crimes they were convicted of were related to deaths that had occurred. Deaths that had occurred several years before.
So,
and no one had thought anything of them then.
Yeah,
but
that's
now,
what I was going to say.
It's witchcraft. I feel like it's just a matter of like, say this or
right.
or
right,
or else.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say about the 9-year-old.
Yeah. The 10 that were found guilty were sentenced to death, and they were hung at Gallows Hill the very next day.
Oh my gosh.
So remember the 2 judges.
Mm-hmm.
Altham continued his judicial career until his death in 1617, and he did. Altham continued with his judicial career until his death in 1617.
Okay.
And then Bromley did get that promotion that he wanted.
Of course he did.
To get closer. So he got his desired promotion to the Midlands Circuit in 1616. And Thomas Potts was given the keepership of Skalmy.
Sure.
Skalme Park by King James I in 1615 to breed and train the king's hounds.
What? Wouldn't that be witchcraft as well?
No. Of course not. He's a man.
He's a man.
In the 3 centuries where witch trials occurred in England, less than 500 people were executed for witchcraft. So this one series of trials over 2 days in 1612 accounts for more than 2% of those executions.
That's crazy.
Also, for what it's worth, court records show that Lancashire had an unusually high amount of witch trials. Cheshire, which is right next to Lancashire, was very similar in economic problems and religious activists, but there were only 47 people indicted for causing harm by witchcraft in this 86-year period.
Oh, wow.
1589 to 1675. And of those 47, only 11 were found guilty.
Oh my gosh.
So we're talking about a trial where 10 were found guilty in this one trial.
And
And
the mother would have been too, but she passed away.
So And really, there were several small rural areas of England that would have been experiencing the same social and economic issues as
Mm-hmm.
Lancashire, but didn't have an outbreak of witch trials. But the thing about the Pendle area is that it was largely sympathetic to the Catholic Church, which, of course, King James was against. So
Right.
that also might have had something to do
Yeah.
with the high number. Plus, Roger Noel being so
Well,
ambitious
yeah.
and wanting to
Yeah.
get the king's favor. So, in 1998, a petition was presented to the UK Home Secretary asking for the witches to be pardoned, but it
Oh.
was denied.
Oh,
Isn't that weird?
what? It's 1998.
I know. I feel like, and usually they're not denied, right?
No.
Another petition was brought forth 10 years later, asking just for the pardon of Old Dimdyke and Mother Chattox, but it was also denied.
What?
All right, so let's circle back to talk about Jeanette, the
Yes.
9-year-old,
Yeah.
who gave testimony that led to the execution of 10 people,
Mm-hmm.
including her whole family and most of her neighbors.
Yeah.
The writings of Thomas Potts, which included Jeanette's testimony, were included in a reference handbook called the Country Justice, and this was used, the Country Justice,
The Country Justice
was used by all magistrates.
I don't,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So good.
Same. Same.
Yes.
Same.
Including those in America, which led people in America to seek out testimony from children in the witchcraft trials as well. So basically, Thomas Potts' book set legal precedent for the use of child evidence in witchcraft cases. In the Salem witch trials in 1692, in which 19 people were hanged, most of the evidence was given by children. So, children had been witnesses in earlier witch trials, but the law had said that children under the age of 14 couldn't be considered credible witnesses because they couldn't be sworn under oath. And Jeanette's testimony in the Pendle trial changed all of that.
Yeah.
And you just have to wonder, like, what if that hadn't happened? What if none of this had happened?
Right.
What if Jeanette...
What would be happening?
Or what if Allison had never passed John Law
Yeah.
on the road? What if she didn't need a pen? What if he had sold her the pen?
Right.
What if Jeanette hadn't testified?
Or what if he had never seen anyone and then fell ill on the ground and started having whatever spell he was having, and then one of these ladies stopped by and helped him?
Right.
Would that still be witchcraft?
If she used natural medicine to
Yeah.
help him? Maybe. 20 years after the Pendle Witches hanged, Jeanette Device was again accused of witchcraft and went on trial on March 24th, 1634. She was found guilty of murder, and the key testimony against her in that trial was provided by a 10-year-old boy. This boy eventually admitted that he had made up his story, so she was acquitted. But in order to be released from jail, she had to pay for her boarding for the amount of time that she had spent there.
I'm sorry, you put me here.
You were wrongfully incarcerated, but now we're going to give you a bill. She never got out of jail. She was
because she was stuck there because she couldn't pay for it because she was in jail and not working.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Records show she was still incarcerated as of August 26, 1636. So remember, her trial was March 24th, 1634.
Uh-huh.
And it is assumed that she died in prison.
Mm.
Even though a 10-year-old boy testified against her and later admitted he'd made it up.
I was joking. I just was mad at her. Gosh. Because she wouldn't play with me on the playground.
Like, who knows why? So that's it. That's the story of
such a good story.
Witches.
It's wild.
I know.
What a whirlwind. Like, one just trickle effect after another.
And I mean, it could be that, like, if this had never happened, maybe some other kid somewhere would have been the 1st one. But I just keep
because they were just looking for ways to get
Oh, yeah. Any way they could.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like people who we talk about all the time who just want to close a case.
Right.
And may not necessarily get the right guy, right? Like, that's what they're doing here.
Yeah.
But they get promotions out of it. And these people get to be King James' favorites. You know? But I don't know, it's just the whole butterfly effect of this one.
Yeah.
But, like, what if the Salem witch trials had never happened?
Oh my gosh.
You know?
Yeah.
They probably would have anyway.
Right.
Just because of the culture at the time.
Say, yeah.
But it's just something that's just so wild to think about.
Satanic panic.
The impact that this trial had on future trials.
That's so crazy.
Mm-hmm. So that's it. The Pendle Witches.
Wow, what a good story.
We've had a couple people who had written in to ask us to cover that one a
Yeah.
long time ago.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I finally did it. So
Here you go.
yeah. All right. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
Anything you have to say.
Yeah.
Just reach out to us all the ways. Oh,
2:00 on the dot.
It's a long episode today.
It was.
Okay.
Are we still?
It's shaking.
It's that alarm.
It always makes me laugh on the YouTube video when I'm like, that was my 2:00 alarm.
There we
Again. So yeah, all the ways to reach us are in the show notes.
Yep.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
Patreon, you've got some new episodes coming next week,
Uh-huh.
as well as if you're in the Janet's level, we're going to be posting the date for the live chat
yeah.
soon, and we're getting samples of merch in now, and
I'm
we're so excited.
excited.
It's just the best.
We're both
So, I think possibly towards the end of next week, we'll finally be ready to go
Yeah.
live with it. But of course, we'll let you guys
Yeah.
know. Okay.
Yay.
We love you.
So much.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.